For a game that, if you believed everything you read in YouTube comments and on Reddit, was going to crash and burn at launch, it's looking pretty good to me. Could some of this be thanks to Season of Discovery needing an update with new endgame content every 4 weeks or everyone disappears? I would say that plays a part, but that's not it all. Numbers aren't everything though. If the content isn't enjoyable, people will disappear away from Cataclysm faster than beers do from my fridge. If we talk numbers for a minute, it's been hovering between 300 and 400,000 characters being logged in raids or doing competitive PvP literally since the start of the expansion. To put this in perspective, this is actually very similar to the back half of Classic 2019's launch and most of TBC. Even the back end of Wrath of the Lich King is being trumped numbers-wise by what we're seeing at the moment. There is some things to consider though. If you compare it directly to the times of TBC Classic, I believe personally there was actually far more individuals playing TBC than there is currently playing Cataclysm. The thing is, Cata is very alt-friendly and actually encourages us to raid on multiple characters due to the way the lockout system works and the fact that you can only do 10 or 25 man on a character each week. If you want to do 10 and 25, then you have to raid on 2 characters bare minimum. So I would say the numbers are definitely more inflated than they would have been compared to, as I said before, TBC. At the moment, I raid on 5 to 6 characters every week, and this is ranging from full normal runs all the way to full heroic runs. Rewinding back to TBC, I think I was raiding on 2 characters absolute maximum. That was because of the painful attunements, long nature of the investment that was needed into your main or your main ult, because reputations wasn't quick, and in general, unless you was super hardcore guild running loads and loads of splits, there was kind of less reason to have more characters. So do I honestly think Cataclysm is as successful as TBC Classic was at the time? Probably no, not numbers wise, but is it better content wise? 100%. Here comes the problem though. I'm already seeing people disappear from the guild. They're in one raid and gone by the next, and that's because, very much like Wrath of the Lich King, outside of raids, unless you want a PvP, there's not really that much to do. Especially when you consider the Valor Point change that was introduced, which I am a big fan of, but it does make smashing all your heroics out on a new character an absolute breeze, because you can do it all in a day or two, buy all your Valor Point gear, and now it's just raid logging on that new character. The same goes with all the quality of life changes. These are changes that either happened historically, like bind on account head enchants, to the newly added bind on account shoulder enchants. It just means there's even less that needs to be done on ults, which is kind of a double-edged sword. It's great for us because we know getting raid ready is really, really quick. We don't need to farm heroics for rep, we just need to farm them for Valor points. But then on the other hand, you get these things done so quickly that actually now there's not really a lot to do on your character that might be 2 or 3 days old. Let me get ahead of the comments here. Yes, you have PvP to do outside of raids, you can farm achievements, farm gold, do your professions and all of that jazz, but there ain't much incentive sending you out in the world like we do see in the future. For those that like to play more than just Cataclysm though, don't get me wrong, this can be a massive positive because it gives you time to play Season of Discovery, time to play retail, classic era, or a completely different game altogether. So summing all that up with the numbers that we're seeing and the fact that there are very busy servers where there's multiple layers in play almost around the clock, the game is healthy and Blizzard need to keep it that way. How do they do that, you ask? Well, they do exactly what they said they was going to do. Drop content faster. We already know there's going to be a real accelerated cadence to Cataclysm, and even though we're just a couple of months in since pre-patch, now would be the time for the next phase. The next phase is not Fireland, so don't panic, I'm not asking for the next raid already. The next phase literally just brings Zul'Gurub and Zolaman. These are 2 5-man heroic dungeons, and actually one of them I would consider repeatable content. So having these in now, even for people that are gearing up to get more gear for their raids, as in for progress raids, or even people that want something to do outside of raids that don't need to farm normal heroics. Because much like the original Zolaman, there's timed runs, and the time runs you can get a mount. Don't get me wrong, once you've got the bear, you might never want to do this again, but you'll most likely be helping other people in the guild that needs to do time runs as well, because it's not the easiest thing in the world. I'm not saying Zolaman is hard by any stretch of the imagination, but joining a random group and successfully getting a time run done is probably going to be really hit and miss, so you're going to be doing it with organized groups. The other thing here is they drop 353 gear. Now 353 gear is fine, don't get me wrong, but I'd like to see what they've done in Season of Discovery have a little bit of an effect in Cataclysm as well. This is where they've been playing with itemization and changing the strength of loot from things like molten core. I'd like to see them just scale all of the Zul'Gurub and Zolaman loot up to 359, because if they scale it up to 359, these 2 heroics would be absolutely amazing for alts to get gear outside of just Valor points. And 353 gear, whilst okay, it's alright, you can get better just from reputations, from crafting, from just doing normal raids. So kinda with it being new content, it doesn't make sense that it's actually lower item level than the older content. Now I know it's only a 5-man heroic, but catch-up gear seems to be the flavour of Classic at the moment, so actually really thinking about it and upscaling these items would be, I think, really, really big. And it would keep the content being run, certainly for the next few months before Firelands comes out. But yeah, I mean, in my opinion, all of these sort of alternative sources for gearing outside of raids is always going to be a good thing. I don't want to fixate too much on what Blizzard should do with the next phase, or certainly before Firelands launches, because that will be for a later video, but I'd also like to see the Molten Front open early. Probably when Zul'Gurub and Zolaman drops. Again, I will do a Molten Front video a little bit closer to the time, but basically you're looking at a solid month or so of dailies to be able to get to the end of it, because the Molten Front progresses through stages, so it's not like you can just do it all in a few days like you could with the Tol Barad reputation, for example. This is actually quite a long slog, and when you're in Firelands, you're not really going to want to be doing this. The actual right time to drop Molten Front will be between Tier 11 and Tier 12, not when Tier 12 launches, because, by the way, the gear's pretty lackluster as well, and you don't get the reputation that you get from the raids. So if you was thinking you was going to do Molten Front dailies to get Avengers of Hyjal rep so you could get 378 items quicker, that's not the case. You only get Guardians of Hyjal rep. So again, just a little tidbit I thought I'd throw in there, because honestly, I really would like to see Molten Front come sooner than when Firelands opens. So while we're talking about Firelands and we're talking about raids in general, how's that looking? I think when you look over Warcraft logs, it's quite clear to see what bosses people are struggling with, what bosses people are getting killed comfortably, and I think out of the 13 heroic bosses that are available, there's only about 4 or 5 that a lot of guilds are having problems with, which is absolutely fine, by the way, and I'll touch on that in just a second. In terms of accessibility, most guilds are being able to get 5 of 6 heroic in BWD, at least 1 or 2 in Bastion, where the vast majority are actually getting at least 3 in Bastion, and then Conclave as well in Throne is not too difficult. The thing is, it's still fairly early in terms of gearing characters, so with things like Sinestro that's currently only got 554 kills on 25-man, or 838 total kills on 10-man, those will go up weekly as people just get more gear. They have more wipes on it, obviously just natural progression. The thing that I think is really nice to see, that even in 10-man, it's the same bosses that have those lower kill numbers as it is 25-man as well. So Nefarian, Sinestra, Ascendant Council, those 3 in particular, are all a lot lower in terms of amount of kills than any of the other bosses. Now, it was common practice originally during Cataclysm for guilds to be working on Firelands Heroic and still going back to get their first Sinestra kill or their first Nefarian Heroic kill, because rather than nerfing the content into the ground, the extra gear from Firelands was enough to be able to finally get your titles and your achievement for those bosses that you was missing. This is something we should be seeing this time round as well, rather than Blizzard trying to drag out Tier 11, waiting until the vast majority have killed it on Heroic, and then the people that killed it in the first 4 to 6 weeks are just really bored of it and maybe go and find a different game to play. You don't want that, obviously. You want a nice balance, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with Firelands coming, even while there is sub 1,000 kills on Nef or sub 1,000 kills on Sinestra, because they will come. I know we all want to clear all the content before the next phase drops, but for some people that is just going to be unrealistic. But the 378 gear that's going to come from just normal Firelands and the better trinkets and the better weapons is going to be enough to actually push them bosses over the edge, is actually going to be enough to just push those groups over the finish line to be able to get the other bosses down, which really is only going to be the things like Sinestra and Nefarian. So what I'm saying is, whilst Firelands definitely shouldn't drop right now, it shouldn't be months and months away either. Maybe another 8 to 10 weeks absolute tops, because then in a couple of weeks you could drop Zul'Gurub, a couple of weeks later you could launch the Molten Front. By the time the Molten Front's done, Firelands comes out, that would be timed perfect. I'm not saying that's what Blizzard's going to do, because they probably won't, but you can kind of hope. Remember as well, Firelands is only 7 bosses, so actually having some of Tier 11 still relevant and some bosses that you want to go back and kill is also going to be a good thing. Because in all honesty, Firelands is not ridiculously hard. It's got one really hard boss, which is obviously Ragnaros. I think most guilds will sit on 6 of 7 heroic very quickly, and then maybe stay on 6 or 7 heroic even into Dragon Soul, because Ragnaros is a really tough fight. But the other 6 fights, some of them are actually easier than some of the tier 11 heroic bosses, so you haven't really got to worry. Like I said, I'm not saying drop Firelands now, it still would need a couple of months, but if Blizzard don't want to bleed numbers, they do need to be dropping small, regular amounts of content during Cataclysm, because like I said earlier, outside of raiding, sometimes it does feel a little bit lackluster. I think overall though, Cataclysm is in a great state, but can quickly go downhill if it's neglected and Blizzard's focus stays too firmly on Season of Discovery. Now is the time for them to take some risks, look at what was well received in Season of Discovery and implement some of it into Cataclysm, even if these things are the shorter, quicker phases where they are getting content out much faster. I know it's slowed down for Season of Discovery since Phase 3, going from Phase 3 to Phase 4, but that is kind of with good reason, but still, look at the amount of people that have stopped playing Season of Discovery when actually it's only been a couple of months or maybe 3 months absolute tops where sort of Sunken Temple's been the endgame content. I know it's a little bit different for Season of Discovery versus Cataclysm, but we want that fast content as well. Even if it was something like a fresh world event that we haven't seen before, or even one that was recycled, but as an alternative way of gearing ults, I'd take that. But just my thoughts on how Cataclysm is so far, how to me it seems like it's been received. The numbers are looking great. The amount of people that are raiding, looks great. And a lot of people seem to be clearing the content, which is really good because lots of people was worried about sort of the level of difficulty with tier 11 raids because obviously they'd heard horror stories. So it's good to see that people are getting through it. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Loads of content coming over the next couple of weeks because I've been slacking. I'm going to get back to it. So I'll see you on the next one.